Okay. Hi, Susie.
Hi, Kris.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. I have not done an interview like this online, so I'm excited to expand my horizons and do something new. So thanks for having me.
Good, absolutely. Well, I've worked with you in the past and was super excited to hear about the launch of your new business. And I know that you have some great information that my clients would love to hear. So I thought, what better way to introduce you and share what you know than with an interview? And with
Well, thank
this
you.
cool Zoom technology, we get to
I know
we get
it's
to, I get to see your face because
I,
you're out in California and I'm here in Texas, and we still get to connect. And my dog wants to say hi. This is Ralph. Hi,
hi.
Ralph.
He's so
Okay,
cute.
now be a good boy.
Adorable.
Okay. So for my audience, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit
Sure.
about you and what you're doing.
Absolutely. So my name is Susie Schaefer, and my company is called Finish the Book Publishing. I am a project manager for authors. So what that means is that I help people when they have a manuscript done or say they want to work with a writing coach. I manage the entire process for them. So I put together their team of uh, editors, layout and cover designers, and I take them through the whole production phase to get their book up on Amazon and to have a printed book and be able to actually complete the whole process. So I manage it for them so that they don't have to try and figure all this out on their own.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that when clients come to me to help build their manuscript, when we're wrapping it up, they're like, "Oh, I'm almost done," and I'm like, "You're almost done with the manuscript, but there's so much more after." And that's why I wanted to have you on today, because it's like I want authors to understand that the writing the manuscript is a big bulk of it, but depending on the genre and everything, that could only be half of what they still have yet to do. So I'm super excited to hear your insight. So how did you become a self-publishing consultant?
Well, I was published in an anthology about 7 years ago. I was asked to tell my story, which was basically about all these different changes in my employment and how that affected me when I was living in rural Colorado. And after I was published, I thought, I've kind of always been a writer. I just never really saw myself as an author. And then after my divorce, I moved back to Denver, and Polly Latofsky and I have been longtime friends for well over 10 years. And she was expanding her business, and she said, "Hey, I want you to come on board, and I want you to start learning this with me. I need a guinea pig. Can you do it?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I've spent the last 3+ years with Polly learning about how the self-publishing industry works, and really honing my skills and becoming a really successful project manager for authors. And then recently moved back to California to be a caregiver for my mom. And after coming back to California, I realized that, I feel like it's about time for me to just spread my wings and go out on my own. And that's how the birth of my company happened.
Very cool. Well, I know you know this because you and I have worked together, but for the sake of the audience, I'll let you know that Polly, who you're referring to, was the project manager on my first book.
Mm-hmm.
And she was introduced to me because she's family.
Yes.
She's my mom's cousin, and I was able to follow Polly in the very early time when she was still walking around the world. Before she even wrote her book, she was doing a blog, which back then blogs really didn't have a platform, but she was keeping track of all of the things that she was doing, and I just have so much respect and love for her. So I love
Agreed.
that we share
Yeah,
her
I just absolutely love her. And if people are seeing this and they haven't seen her speak or read her book, you need to do that. It's
Absolutely, and I'll put a link in the notes about that because she is phenomenal and her story is just amazing.
it really
So,
is. Yeah.
um, tell me a bit about why authors are choosing self-publishing.
So authors are choosing self-publishing because it is fast and easy. Um, and I know you and I are going to kind of go through the different ways that authors can publish, but really self-publishing is about making it easy and affordable, and in most cases, keeping all your rights.
Very good. So, if let's go into those different ways that authors can publish. If they don't self-publish, what other options are out there?
So first of all is traditional publishing. This is what people normally are used to thinking of when they're thinking about publishing. This is the Random House, the Penguin, the big name publishers that really they pick up the big names like Oprah Winfrey and Tony Robbins and those kinds of things. Those are usually your traditional publishers.
Right, and those are the ones that are paying authors up front for them to write a book. And it's what all authors really want to see have happen, of course. They want to write the great American novel, get picked up by a big publishing house, go on a book tour, and make millions.
Exactly.
So it sounds so great. Why are they not going that route?
So the reason why a lot of authors don't go that route is because now statistics are showing us that less than 1% of people who submit their manuscripts to a traditional publisher are actually picked up. And the reason they're not is because they don't have that big following. They've got to have a huge platform like a Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey in order to get picked up by those traditional publishers. They also don't do these big, grandiose advances like they used to do. Really, an advance is usually around $10,000 to $15,000, and then you also lose your rights, because what happens is when you sign on with a traditional publisher, you're really allowing them to take control of your book and then change it as they see fit.
Right. And for some of us who say, well, $10,000 to $15,000 sounds pretty great, when you think about the time that you're actually spending putting into the book and then marketing afterwards, that's not even an annual salary, and yet you're probably spending a year to get that all into place. So
exactly.
I definitely hear that. So traditional publishing seems like it takes a long time as well. And I think I recently read that J.K. Rowling's, the author of the Harry Potter series, was rejected 13 times before she got picked up. And she's now the #1 top paid author in the world.
Yeah, and she's a great success story because she stuck with it and she just kept persevering. But that getting rejected 13 times, that's a little hard on the ego. So you have to have a thick skin if you're going to go after that. But truly, it does take a long time. Usually it can take you at least 3 years to get published. And so as we talk about some of the other methods of publishing, that timeline can be shortened quite a bit by using other methods.
I agree. I totally agree with you on that. And I've had a lot of my writers who are interested in going that route, looking at getting an agent and all the additional costs that going into it. So I'm super excited about what you're going to tell us next. If they don't choose traditional publishing because of those pitfalls that you've told us, what are other options?
So other options are a small independent press. So these are like the traditional publishers in that you usually have to submit your manuscript and be accepted, be picked up. And it's great because, again, you're getting that identification of being picked up by a publisher. A lot of times you have to have an agent in order to do that as well. But it's nice because then you're saying, yeah, I was picked up by a publisher, and so it looks great. But, again, you're going to see some things that may not fall in line with what your goals are as an author. Again, it's going to take a little bit of time to get that whole process going. There's not a lot of money involved in it. And again, you're doing a royalty share. You're giving up your rights to that publisher. And lastly, and we've seen this time and time again, those small, independent presses many times will go out of business or be bought by the larger publishing companies. And the problem is that then your book is in this limbo. You don't necessarily have the rights to your book, and then it's being transferred over. And so those can create some kind of legal nightmares as well.
Yeah, I found that with a few stories that I've submitted. I submitted them to a contest. They got approved and accepted, and then that publisher went out of business and I lost my story. And it actually impacted my ability to resubmit it to another publishing company because they wanted unpublished works. So it was a matter of getting my rights back to be able to then again put my story out there. And I can't imagine birthing an entire book and having that happen. It was a
Exactly.
nightmare enough with the short story. So,
And I have had several authors who have come to me with that very scenario where they said, the publishing company folded. What do I do now? And they have to go through this long legal process to determine if, in fact, they actually can keep their rights, or if they have relinquished their rights. And then at that point, they're not able to resubmit that book. They would have to rewrite the book, reskin the book, meaning a new cover, and redo the entire process. And even then, sometimes they still legally are not able to do that. So it creates a future issue for authors when they go with some of the small independent presses.
Yeah, you basically become a business partner with them without any of the control, really, of being a business partner. So that would be very frustrating.
Right.
Now, what about all these publishing packages I see online? I mean, if you type into any search engine, I want to publish a book, pretty much everyone comes up with, gold, silver, platinum packages that you can purchase to be published. Tell me a little bit more about those.
Exactly. So those are really, really popular. And some of the reasons why they're popular is because they're relatively, for the most part, inexpensive. They're fast. You can pretty much use these packages and have your book done in, 6 to 9 months, sometimes less. And you basically it's a plug and play, so to speak. So it's fairly fast and simple to do that. But there's also some downsides too.
Tell me more about those. I have my own stories, but I'd like to hear your side.
And this is probably the number one thing that I end up coaching people on when they come to me and say, I publish with, for example, Lulu, Balboa's, some of the other ones that you'll see out there, those vanity presses. And they come to me and say, what do I do? This isn't what I wanted, or I'm stuck now, and what do I do? Well, the first problem is that you have now entered into an agreement with whatever that press is. So if you're not happy with the services, you can't get out of that contract. There's just no way to. So whatever you've signed up to pay on a monthly basis or upfront, you are stuck with that. The other thing is that when you're going through, they usually say that they have an online editor for you. And when you go through that editing process, you'll never actually talk to your editor. It's usually just done by email, so it's all online. Many times the editors are not experienced. They're coming either right out of school, or they may be a first-time editor and usually don't have the experience as qualified editors that I know you and I both work with to really make sure that that book is the best it could possibly be. So it is frustrating for people, and they will come to me sometimes and say, what do I do? In addition, you're also you're doing a type of royalty share. Some of them say you get 100% of your royalties, but and they may do that, but then on the backside, what happens is you end up paying additional for printing your book. So there's an upcharge for printing. So what are some of the things that you've seen?
Well, I worked with one client who the editor flat out rejected her book and told her that it wasn't ready and gave no feedback for change.
Wow.
And so she actually had to spend several hours, if not days, talking to the company to get a new editor and get her book read and edited, which she paid for. She prepaid for that. The original editor didn't have any basis for rejecting the manuscript, and the second editor got done with it in no problem, but just the heartache and headache that she had to go through. Another client that came to me told me that she was being nickeled and dimed, that she felt like she had paid for a package, but when she wanted to make a change, she was asked for money, and then, if you want us to actually talk about your book, it's this much, and if you want us to actually do this, it's this much more. And she finally just said, you know what, I'm digging a hole and I'm going to stop digging. And she couldn't get out of her contract, but she was able to not proceed, not go forward. And she did what you had said. She had to revamp it and make it so that she could publish it on her own.
Exactly.
Because she just was tired of spending.
Yeah. There's two really good things that you mentioned there. The first one is that someone who would actually reject the manuscript, because here's the thing. If you are not a traditional publisher, then in my opinion, you have no right to reject a manuscript. So an author might come to me and say, I want to publish my book, it is not my place to tell them whether this is a good book or a bad book or somewhere in between. I will work with somebody and get them with an editor so the editor can make it the best book possible.
Exactly.
But that's not our judgment call. And I think that's where I feel like Vanity Press, if they're doing that, they're overstepping, because they're not paid to do that. They're paid to provide a service. So I think that there's a little gray area there, and that makes me worrisome for authors that get caught up in this situation. And again, the what you said about them being nickel and dimed, many authors say, yes, it's, it's $50, $75 and up and up and up for every little change. And sometimes after you go to press, meaning you're printing your book, you go back and you say, I found an error that is driving me nuts. I have to fix it. You should have the ability to make that change and not have it cost you a fortune, because it's your book, it's your rights. So when they charge you these up fees or up charges in order to revise the manuscript or add an award to your cover, it doesn't make sense to me. So that's why when authors have used some of these presses and they've come to you or they come to me and they say, what do I do? Unfortunately, they're stuck. But the good thing is that you and I can save people from making those mistakes a second time around.
That's what I hope to do. I feel like I've been a writer my whole life, and so to me, writing and publishing industry, those are my passions. And I remember when I was younger, self-publishing was so taboo. Nobody did it. Basically, the only people who did it were people who were just not skilled enough to get picked up by a traditional publisher. And then this whole mass of writers came along and said, nobody's getting picked up anymore. We need a solution. And I feel like self-publishing took it up a notch, and they started creating products that were actually quality. Awards started showing up for self-published authors to start building credibility. And there is junk out there, because anyone can publish today. If I want to publish a book, I can go on to Amazon and I can make that happen in the matter of an hour. Yeah. So it really, I believe very much in self-publishing, but doing it with high quality. And so I think that's why you and I are such a great match, because I know that we both really believe that and want to save authors who deserve to have their voice heard from getting sucked up into predatory practices of the industry. And so that's really my goal, and I know that's your goal as well. So it sounds to me like self-publishing, based on the other options, there's positives and negatives to all of them. What are some of the negatives to self-publishing?
I think some of the negatives to self-publishing is that you don't have that that validation of having an imprint like Random House or something like that, or even a small independent press. So you don't have that validation. And so that can be a negative for people, depending on if they're doing a business book or what industry they're in, or really what they're going for. But aside from that, there really aren't any negatives. Well, I guess you could say the author has to foot the cost. So, whether you're using a vanity press and then you're, dealing with someone who, is an editor that you've never talked to, or you put the money up front and have someone work with you to coach you through the process and put you in touch with people that are reliable, good editors that are vetted. I think, the downside is that you have to foot the cost for that. But on the flip side to that, I think when you're working with a team of professionals that have done multiple books and have won multiple awards, and those kinds of people, you can rest assured that your book is going to be the best possible book it can be. So it provides them a sense of security and almost like an insurance that, so yeah, you're going to foot the bill for it, but it's like buying insurance. You're like, okay, I know that this book is going to be good. It's not going to have a vanity press label on it and then be looked at and say, oh, well, now I can't go apply for awards, because I've got a vanity press. You have more options when you self-publish, simply because you're doing it the right way, in my opinion.
I agree. And a high quality self-published book is going to have the credibility to allow you to make your money back, and you're going to make it back faster, because instead of getting a 10% royalty, you're getting 50% of sales about based on production, so
Yeah.
that's great.
And I should mention too, the big question always is about book marketing. Like, how does book marketing work and who pays for that and everything else? And it doesn't matter what form of publishing you use, but you can guarantee as an author, you are responsible for doing your own marketing. So that doesn't mean you got to figure it out all out on your own. There are people out there that are coaches and guides and people you can hire to do that for you. But really, the author is responsible for doing it. And the great thing about this is that it allows the author to figure out who their target market is, what they're going for, what are their goals for their book, and then they can design their own marketing plan based on what their goals are, instead of having someone tell them, oh, you should do this, this, and this, when it doesn't match what their goal for the book is.
I agree. Absolutely agree. So, as a self-publishing consultant, what are some of the steps, or what is the journey like with you when somebody works with you?
So when someone wants to work with me, what I do is first of all, I'll sit down and talk to them about their book and say, okay, so what is your book? Let's talk about that. Let's figure out what your goals are. Is it a business book? I mean, are you trying to build a speaking and consulting and coaching business? And that's why you have a book, because many people find that a book really does help boost their business and gives them credibility. Is it a memoir? I mean, are you trying to tell your story either for your family as a legacy book, or are you wanting to bring light to maybe a medical issue or something that's going on? Or is your book a self-help? I mean, are you really just saying, from my experience in my life, it's kind of a memoir, self-help, and a how-to, and so it really depends on what your book is. So determining that is really the key, and making sure that author understands what the process is and how this looks, what the costs are involved. And then if they decide that they want to work with me, the first things we do is I figure out, okay, do you need a writing coach or do you need an editor? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to have an author work with a writing coach because they're either not done with the manuscript or they're not quite sure where things need to be. And so they kind of need to work with a writing coach to put the finishing touches on the manuscript. The good thing is that it usually saves them money in editing. And then they go through the rounds of editor. I introduce my authors to 2 editors so that they have an opportunity to meet those editors, talk to those editors, and it might even just be a writing coach, because sometimes a writing coach and an editor is the same person. But it's important that they develop a relationship and a bond with them, because they're telling a story. Regardless of what type of book it is, they're still telling a story. And so it's important that they have that good connection. And from there, I just work on putting together the entire team. So finding someone who is going to do a fantastic cover for them, working with the interior layout designer, and setting up all the systems. There's a lot of things that have to be done online that most authors don't know. And they can go read the tutorials, but it's going to take them 10 times as long to figure out how to set up their Amazon KDP print account than if they just let me do it, and then I train them on the back end on how this all works. So that's kind of how it works. Usually I work with authors 6 to 9 months, sometimes up to a year. But you can see by having someone who coaches them through the whole process and works with them, they really can cut down on the time that they spend in rounds of editing and just the process of it. So it allows an author to have a book out within 9 months to a year versus 3 years.
Right. And one of the things that I loved most about working with the project manager was that I was working full time. My novel was something that I did out of just love and passion, and I didn't have time to pull together all the cogs and wheels and not even that, but learn what I need to learn to have the right professionals in place. I had tried to find an editor on my own before I met Polly and started working with her, and I had gone through 2 editors that were not good fits because they just weren't, And
Exactly.
so, an interior design layout. I am an avid reader and a writer my whole life, and I had never heard about that. And once I met with my designer, it was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And it's just amazing what we don't know that we don't know.
Exactly. And authors, especially first-time authors, I would never expect them to know these things. It is out of their wheelhouse. It's not normal for them to know the things that we know. And you're right. So, making sure that that layout, it's not just a Word document that gets uploaded to KDP. You can do that, but then your book still is going to appear to be self-published and probably is not going to get great reviews. You're going to have trouble getting awards, things like that really help boost your book and in your marketing and that kind of thing too. So you're right. There's so much that you have to know. And one of the things that I learned personally now that I'm writing my book is that while I might be a good writer, perfect writer. Hemingway used editors and that type of thing. So why we should think that we are all that great is kind of funny. But I found that one of the things I really enjoyed was working with a writing coach so that I can actually stay on track and not veer off, the freeway when I just need to stay in my lane and tell my story. And so the writing coach was extremely helpful for most authors. And when they work with one, and then they go into, it just seamlessly goes from writing writing coaching into the editing. It makes so much more sense for the author, and they get it.
Yeah, that's great. So how do people get in touch with you?
So people can email me, Susie at finishthebookpublishing.com.
Okay.
So Susie at finishthebookpublishing.com. I am currently, because my business is so new and I've just launched it, my website is still under construction, but you can certainly email me and I'm happy to chat with you about your book and see where can I help you? How can I help you get your book done in the next year? I think it's fantastic, and we want to encourage authors,
Absolutely. Well, I'll definitely put your contact information in the notes as well. Is there anything else that we should know?
I think that's pretty much it.
We talked about a lot. We covered a lot.
And I would always just say to people, don't think that this is overwhelming. There's people like Kris and I that can help you figure out how to take us and break it down into little chunks and do a little bit at a time and get your book done. So if nothing else, just reach out to somebody and get it going.
I agree. Just keep writing.
Keep writing. Yep, that's the way.
Okay, well, I may want to have an interview with you again and cover some more topics, because you're really the reason why people write their books, is to get it published. They work with me to get it written, but they don't write it and then sit it on their shelves. Well, hopefully they don't. Hopefully they get it out into the world. So I'd love to have you back another time and chat with you more.
Wonderful. I would love to come back. And I would say, if you're seeing this on Kris's, on Facebook or wherever she's going to post this video, if you're seeing stuff that you want to learn about and you want Kris and I to talk about on a topic, please let her know. And then we can reconnect and then talk about stuff specifically that you guys have an interest in learning about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, Susie. This was awesome. Thank you for giving me some time today.
Yes, I so appreciate it. And you take care. Be well in Texas, and I'm going to go out in the rain.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.